Hello, and thank you for coming to the 10th Annual Lake County Film Festival. This is the Q&A for the Death and Life Shorts program, and I am very pleased to have filmmakers from both films here. We've got Noah Glenn from Life After Death. We've
Hi.
got Orion Paul from Bury Me at Taylor Hollow, and we've got John Christian from Bury Me at Taylor Hollow. How's it going, everyone?
Hey, it's good to see you guys.
It's good to see everyone again. We have done this before. I was saying purposely scheduled this on Sunday morning because it's such a spiritual collection of films. We've got death and afterlife. Let's see where do we want to go first? Actually, Noah, why don't you tell me where you got the idea for this afterlife support group?
Yeah, the idea was a long time coming. I read an article somewhere 10 or 15 years ago about this real life situation where a guy had been declared legally dead, and it was just about all the kind of legal hoops he had to jump through to try to prove that he was actually alive. And I thought that was an interesting story, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with it. And I had tried writing it as a drama. And at some point decided it should be a comedy for some reason. And but it actually, I don't usually go here in the Q&As, but everything we've all been going through lately, I'll be a little more direct in that in 2016 or really early 2017, just seeing marginalized communities being just seeing the hate, seeing the ways communities were being treated. That's really when the idea of a support group came to mind in the context of this project. And I wanted to create what the movie is about whatever makes you feel different, whatever makes you feel like other people wouldn't understand you or accept you, that there are other people who will love you, will appreciate you, will accept you as you are. And so something clicked, and I decided putting not just about one guy who was declared legally dead, but what if there were a bunch of people like this? Mm-hmm. And I felt like that would be such a seemingly out there problem to have, that my hope was that most people could kind of lay their own situation on top of that story and say, well, yeah, I haven't been declared legally dead, but I don't talk to my family anymore, or I just whatever the thing is that makes life hard for you sometimes, that finding other people that understand you and accept you is ultimately this is a film about death, but it's a film that celebrates life. So
it's interesting. I thought this was going to be one of the few Q&As that didn't wind up political today, on today of all days. I looked at the schedule today and said, wow, this is a great day to talk about all of this stuff. But you just made me think of two things, actually. One, that as I was growing up, the expression "you're dead to me" would be something that parents would say to their children when they declare themselves different from what they want to be, whether they're, trans wasn't as much an issue, 30 years ago, but, gay or whatever it is that they don't like. And now it seems to be the opposite, post 2016. It's like, my parents voted for Trump, they're dead to me. We seem to have reversed the process of who the who's complaining about who. Bury Me at Taylor Hollow. Ryan, how did you stumble across John and his story of wanting to build this naturalized cemetery? How did he come on your radar, and you guys link up and decide to make a film about it?
Yeah. Real quick, I love that you tell people your films about that, Noah, because support is such an under talked about thing in communities, and it looks so different now as people live across the country and don't live with their families. And if you've ever sat in like a recovery group or a healing group, there's just no BS, and it's so cool. It's like a rare place where you can experience humans as humans, and not like trying to look this way for work or trying to look this way for whatever. So if people haven't seen the film, I think it helps going in with knowing that's kind of what it's about. But John Christian and I met in Nashville. My wife and I were in White's Mercantile. You can actually read about it on the Larkspur Conservation website. John Christian just posted kind of a brief blog post about the journey, but we just met him, and he worked then. His passion project was this natural burial thing, but he was working at a general store as kind of the curator of all the products in there. He's always had kind of like an aesthetic gifting to like curate things, even though he used to do it for 15 years, like in the funeral industry. So we met him, talked about some art and photography books, and then we saw him again at this event, and Rebecca, my wife, and I kind of just grilled him about like natural burial. How did you get here? Oh my gosh. And then when you talk to a mortician or someone that used to be like he just has stories that like could keep anybody around the campfire engaged for hours. And it was more of that shock and awe probably in our earlier conversations that first year. And I think it moved into like knowing more of his struggles and knowing more of like what the film was going to be about, and really focusing in on that. But I don't know if you want to add anything, John Christian.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing connecting with Ryan and Rebecca, and to have them just kind of walk along with me, and not knowing where it was going to lead, but then it becomes this film. They're kind of my shadow for 5 years, and we're seeking out land, and we're trying to change the perception of end-of-life care and what that has to look like, and we're connecting with individuals that want to help support this movement, and we're demystifying death, and we're connecting with nature in an interesting way, and then we start working with families, and then there are deaths, and there are burials, and just the culmination of all of that work and all of those emotions coming together. To see it in one little short film is really it's overwhelming for me. When I look back on it, I'm like, wow, we actually did this, and the weight of the work is there and present. And I think back, yes, I can't wait for the day that I have the support and we have this space and we can create it for people, because the creation of that labor of creating this nonprofit, this natural burial preserve within a protected landscape, with saving land and working with people in death, all of those things, when it comes together, it's just such a relief. But the building of it was such a struggle and a weight, and it was working through a lot of your own grief, I think, too, through that process. But Orion and Rebecca were able to capture it, and they're lifelong friends of mine now. I thought, this is just some cool kids that have moved in from California or something. Let's go talk to them and see what they're up to. And now here we are.
I posted in the comments that blog post Orion mentioned. I went through a lot of different, when you're programming, I program maybe differently from a lot of people. I don't figure out what boxes I need to fill and find movies. I look at the movies and figure out, how do these things connect? And I had a lot of different ones, especially for you, for Barry at Taylor Hollow. I had, somebody spreading ashes, and I had a thing about gravestones. I was like, how can I work this in? And I decided this worked really well, but I actually hadn't thought about this whole unconditional support that you both people give. John Christian, you don't mention a support group, but you're there for emotional support for everybody who's going through a trying time. And just because Noah's is a little bit of a farce and yours is, completely true and real, doesn't, it doesn't matter to me. They connect very well,
Right.
Noah, one thing I really love is last time you told us about all the various ideas that you guys had in ways that people joined the support group, and even the ideas tossed out. Can you talk about the fleshing out of the script for us?
Yeah. No, I kind of, I wish I'd met John Christian before writing the script, because I'm sure he could share a bunch of ideas from just being in the funeral industry for a number of years.
John,
and actually,
have you ever created a grave with no one inside?
Yes, we have actually.
Oh, wow, great. But you check if they're actually dead first, right?
Well, it's rumored that the person is dead, but we really don't know.
Oh, wow. I just thought Noah's intro was funny. Wow, I wish you had talked to him first.
I did get in touch during production in trying to locate a coffin to use in a few scenes. I did get in touch with someone who worked in a funeral home here in Memphis, and was telling him about what the movie was going to be about. And he was like, "Oh yeah, a buddy of mine down in Mississippi, that happened to him. It was like a junior died, and or a senior, junior, senior. Like I think the father had died, but somehow the names got mixed up and they put the wrong social security number on a death certificate or something like that."
Yeah.
So he's like, "Oh yeah, this happens."
That happens. Wow. Yeah.
But to your question, Nat, once I knew that I wanted there to be a support group and that I wanted it to be funny, I was kind of stuck. I had like an opening scene of how this guy gets to the support group. But I kind of got stuck in a corner of like, what are these people's stories? And so I reached out to my friend Julia McCloy, who hadn't written for film before, but does a lot of comedy writing, a lot of satire, like essays. And I had seen something she'd written that really delicately threaded the needle on something that could have been a heavy subject, but finding some light and heart and humor, irreverent kind of humor in situations. I call this I like to say this film is a lighthearted dark comedy. So I had seen Julia do some work that I thought would be a great fit. So we just kind of got together and brainstormed what might be a weird situation that could lead someone to being declared dead. And then we talked about probably a range of 5 or 10 ideas. And she went off and spent a few weeks and wrote monologues of as if she was these different characters. And I think she sent me 4 or 5 or 6 of them, and I ended up selecting 3 of them and tailoring them to use in the film. So
do Orion and Noah, do you guys have any particular problems in production? Any obstacles that made production difficult?
I'll let you go first. No,
I mean, a lot of my difficulties were revolving around having, filming in a cemetery, and for a long time. Originally, it was supposed to be in the middle of the night in a cemetery, and I'm an independent filmmaker. I didn't want to sneak into a graveyard in the middle of the night to film without permission, though. So it took a while to find a location, and actually Elmwood Cemetery in Memphis is a historic cemetery, who I was connected with them by the Memphis and Shelby County Film Commission. But it turns out the director of Elmwood Cemetery is actually, oh gosh, I've gotten in the middle of this story and I'm going to blank on a name. She's married to Willie Bearden, who's a filmmaker. And so while I had tried to get in touch with a few other cemeteries who were weirded out by the whole situation. She got it and she was on board, and she, directed us to a particular part of the grounds that there had not been any burials there in a long enough time that she was able to sort of give us restricted access to a certain area and just the freedom to film as we needed to there. So, but it was a long time coming in finding that location. And there's a whole nother story about trying to get this coffin that I already alluded to. But it was the week we were set to film, and I still didn't have a coffin, which was needed for 2 separate scenes. And I got connected to a friend's cousin who worked in a funeral home, and I was texting with him to see if we could potentially film in the funeral home or use anything that they had. And he got back to me. He said, I talked to my supervisors. We're not going to be able to let you film here or use anything. And this was all in a text message. But I have a personal coffin that I'd be happy to let you use. It's lightly soiled. There's a story. And at that point, I didn't care what the story was. We needed this to make the film. But so I found myself days before filming began with my friend Sean, who is in from out of town. He's plays the lead character, Vincent. He and I are following this guy that we've just met across the river into another state to like this old airplane hangar in the middle of nowhere where he's got a coffin in storage.
Come on.
And he, told us the story. It ended up being, that a man had died while abroad and his body had been shipped home. The family just took a look at the coffin and said, "We don't want this thing. We want a new one. We want something different." And he had taken the coffin, and he said he used it as a Halloween decoration, and until he got married and his wife made him stick it in storage. So anyway, put myself into some weird situations just trying to get some props and locations for the film.
Ryan?
Yeah, I think for me, the obstacles were, part of it was just that this was such a independent film. I was working part-time and doing freelance part-time, and there's like a scene where they buy the land, and like for some reason I wasn't free, and my friend Josh filmed it for me. But there's probably just like not having open time just for everything that was coming up for John Christian, speaking events, burials. And then 2, I think I was just kind of filming, and I did not enter this project with a firm vision of the shape of the story. And so that kind of reverted to this anxiety of film everything. It might be important versus here's a story I'm going to tell. These are the blocks I need to film, kind of approaching it with more intention. And I think that's just a learning curve for me. And that's a big learn from this project. The reason that this film got made is because my wife kind of helped push me to be like, we have to make, you have all this footage, you have to make this. And I think I was still daunted by the editing process and the story sculpting. And she kind of helped set aside time and us to just work on it and prioritize it. And, it's like any piece of art, any chair you make, any project at your home, it's like you eventually stop working on it. Like when I watch the film, I know there's things that I wish I would have done differently or shortened or XYZ, but we just chose a story shape and then followed it, and told that. There's a lot of stories that could still be told about John Christian and Larkspur and death, especially the industry of death. But this is more, yeah, the challenge was just going into it not knowing those things. So then just feeling like I had to film everything.
I do feel like those are the most impressive documentaries, when people go in and cover a story and they don't know what's going to happen. Something like Hoop Dreams, where you don't know if these kids 5 years before are going to be successful, if you're going to have an interesting story, anything. I remember startup.com. He just happened to start following people and not knowing not knowing that he was going to be, documenting this spearheaded movement that was going to shape, the whole 21st century, just following some .com startups. I think that works.
Yeah.
I think that works a lot. As far as when to quit, I mean, was this the first burial at the end at Larkspur?
The footage is the first burial where John Christian is that closing scene where he's looking in the camera, he's wearing his overalls. That was the first burial. It was someone that wanted to be buried at Larkspur and then had passed before Larkspur was open. So that was actually burying someone's ashes. And then like the more cinematic credits burial was just John Christian staged that so that we could film it. Which I don't tell everyone, but I think I actually interned at Cartemquin Films, the film house that made Hoop Dreams and a lot of other films, and went to film school. And so kind of like a more old school documentary approach in some ways. And part of that is like knowing your characters well and building rapport. And that was a conversation with John Christian and I over 2016 and 2017, like following someone's death that would actually be buried there. But it just didn't work out to actually have the right access that felt appropriate to do that.
I think ending with a burial, is a great ending for the film. But as always with documentaries, you always want to know more. John, can you give us an update on Larkspur? How's it been over the last, 3 years?
Wow. Well, the pandemic has certainly changed things, but right out of the gate, we were well received, both by the community and the funeral industry, to tell you the truth. That probably comes from my being a part of the funeral industry and having some connections within the funeral community. But, I just 2 days ago had our 53rd burial. I've seen everyone from 13 years old to 99 at this point and made this journey with these families. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing to see that death can be transformational when you do it a certain way and you use nature as a tool to help tell a story, but break down barriers. It's been something else. I will say that the pandemic has shifted everything, and it's made us have to think how our rituals and being together, how important those are, but how to do it differently. And then since the film, I've become the president of the Conservation Burial Alliance, which is a national nonprofit organization who works to educate the general public, funeral industry professionals, land conservation advocates, and bring everyone together to teach everyone how valuable burial paired with land conservation can be, and how to create space like what we have at Larkspur in other communities around the country. So that's been a huge step for us too, and something that's come out of this entire process.
How has COVID changed your burial process, or your at least obviously the congregation part of it?
Well, technology is playing a much larger role than we had envisioned, because with us, our idea is to strip everything down and don't bring any of the noise of the everyday world into the preserve. But we've really had to get creative with photography and, steady cams and filming every aspect of a burial that at one point 2 years ago, Orion and I were like, this is a very intimate moment. We can't just film this. We can't take away from someone's experience. This is a one-time thing that they get. It's like the birth of a baby. You don't just show up with the camera and be like, okay, and there's like this weird guy with the camera, right? And you're totally distracted from what's happening. We didn't want that, but now it's almost necessary to have that, because we know that if we don't capture it, these families can't share it the way they want, because normally there'd be so many more people there together. So that's probably the biggest way that it's shifted.
Do you
Very small groups of people, and
live stream?
obviously we're wearing masks.
Do you try to live stream, or
I don't live stream because we're in such a rural area that service is not strong enough. So I've found it more important to capture really good quality video and then put it all together, and like 24 hours after the burial has occurred, present that to the family so that they can share it with their friends. And it's more meaningful that way. And if something happens, you can edit it with the power of film. You can tidy everything up into a package, and make sure that it's presented the way the family wants it.
Cool. Noah and Orion, can you tell me what's next for the films? Are they nearing the end of their festival run, or are they going to pop up online somewhere people can see them?
I reached out to Noah because you had mentioned that in the last Q&A that he was kind of at the end of the festival run, and because I had no budget for this film, I've been very selectively starting, but this is the second film it's the festival it's played at, and it's going to try to do that for the rest of the year. Not because I'm trying to sell it or whatever. I just want to create conversations around death. And so it'll be at festivals probably up until summer, and then I'll make it available. If people really want to see it, I've been sharing it and just asking them to like share it with someone or watch it with someone and have a conversation, and doing the movement impact side of it kind of ourselves right now, outreach part, because that's why I made this film, was to people to see a new option and have conversations about it. So
like most filmmakers, you just want it to be seen. That's why you started it. You want to share a story,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm on the other side, like Orion was saying. I've mine premiered in, forget now, maybe July or August of 2019. So I've had a weird. I did about 6 festivals before COVID, and then was supposed to be at the Oxford Film Festival in Oxford, Mississippi. Like, it was the weekend after everything shut down, and it was like days until it was about to happen. I was still waiting to, is the festival happening or not? So second half of my festival run has been these virtual events, which has been an interesting experience, but I'm coming to the end. There's, I think, maybe a couple of festivals that may be happening a little later in the year, but probably in January or early next year, I'll be making the film more widely available online. And I hope to, not actively working on this at the moment, but I've got another short film that I'm shooting in the spring. But this project, Life After Death, I've done a handful of short films. I've never done a feature, and Life After Death is the one film I've done that I think has the space to develop it out into a feature. And honestly, John, Christian, and Ryan have alluded to the fact that we were, in the Nashville Film Festival, we were in another Q&A together. I got to see their film after that, and it really got ideas churning in my head for making this short into a feature. And I think I'd like to, if that day comes, I'd like to incorporate a natural burial into that film. So if that comes to fruition, I'm sure I'll be reaching out to you guys to help make that happen.
For sure.
And since Orion didn't mention
Very
you
cool.
were both at Nashville, and Orion won the Audience Award for Best Short Film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for the Tennessee Shorts program. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Noah took my question of what's next. Orion, what's next for you?
I have been kind of taking future planning lightly. I've had a lot of anxiety come up during the pandemic. I think it's connected to everything. Partially, I think about thinking about my own death a lot, and then partially some health things that I didn't know what the source was. And so I have been limiting like my planning into the future. The Nashville Film Festival was this big kind of affirmation for my partner, Rebecca, and I to keep making films and to keep focusing in on the things we're naturally drawn to, because there's inspiration there. But yeah, I think that for me, similar even to what Noah said, I think that I am interested in making like a 60-minute or 80-minute film about death. That would be maybe like 1/5 Larkspur, and then more about like why we don't talk about it, and some of the death positive movement, maybe some of the people like changing the culture around it. And yeah, I don't, like I said, I've been kind of withholding any specific plans. Been taking life very much day by day for the most part, but that could be in the future, and hopefully just more films over time with my wife and I. There's a guy here that spent 23 years in Nashville, in a Tennessee prisons, that I made like a fundraiser trailer for him, but that could be a story about this guy named Raheem Buford, who's a big activist, who's spent the majority of his life in prisons, and he's pretty inspiring person. So that's also a story that could be a short, could be longer, depends how that would shape out.
The longer feature sounds great, especially it's kind of what I always like, but if it's got a fast, cheap, out of control feel where I don't need a narrator, just talk to these people and cut in between them in a way that shows these various elements of these various people. It sounds fantastic. The first time I talked to you, actually, I was kind of going through the same thing. We had a little bit of a health scare here, which resolved itself, and then another one popped up. So, I'm in the same boat, kind of thinking about what do I want to do next year? How much do I want to, pour into this, that, or the other thing if there's more problems coming. So we'll see. John, anything on the horizon? Obviously, besides Larkspur or future plans? I thought I heard something about an expansion at one point.
Yes, we actually do have. We have a second property that we're working to open within the next 3 to 5 years. It will be another nature preserve that is designed for natural burial, public open green space, protected under conservation. So that's really exciting. And then we have a third potential that has come to us as well. So that will be a potential third project like this that Larkspur will have created. So that's exciting, and that's enough to keep me busy. I talk about death almost every single day. So I kind of been hinting at myself, kind of like you guys are, to focus a little bit on living and life and making space for sunny days and things that are not quite as heavy, and trying to get away from some of that too, because I think that in life, just like in death, just like in life, you've got to find that balance so that you can be in the moment but not be overwhelmed with it.
It's so hard when what your job is something that you love, and it's so hard to separate the work from the play when they mix together.
You put it first.
Yeah.
You put it first, and you put yourself second.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. But this isn't, doing this for me isn't second from myself. I mean, this is part of, this is, I want what I do and what I want to do. Yeah. So, the shift between doing this, which is ostensibly work, or going to a water park is the same. I mean, I would rather be here. Yeah, I'd rather be here talking to people about the philosophy of film and creating it and things like that. So it can be hard to separate the work and playtime when the work is the playtime.
Work is playtime. You're right. I do find myself in awkward situations where I'm trying to relax and have a good time, and all I can do is think about work and do work, and it is because it's what you love and it's what you want to be doing. So yeah, that is definitely a challenge.
One last thing, you were talking about that. Are those, just out of curiosity, are those areas connected? The expansions, the 3 different areas?
Geographically, they are separate and distinct ecosystems.
Cool. Interesting. Well, thanks a lot for joining me, guys. This has been a great Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for curating it and your intrigue. And I think your creative pairings of films is cool. Looking at everybody else in the Film Fest lineup.
Yes, my right after this, we're doing Always Punch Nazis, which was, it will be another one that I will end up introducing by talking about why I think these titles go so well together, because they do. Anyway. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. And